Have you ever looked back on a decision that's made you think, if someone had just told me that, I knew I would never have done it? Like, I know I have, and in fact, when I look back, probably over the last 20 years of my life, almost every lesson that's genuinely changed who I am came from mistakes that I made or things that I got wrong. And a lot of those mistakes cost me a lot of money. Some of them caused me a lot of stress. Some of them took months, even years to recover from, but every single one has taught me something. And I think if I'd known beforehand, I would have made such a big difference. And that's why this channel exists. That's why it's called Mike's School of Mistakes. Now, despite the name, the channel is something looking about the future. It's about learning from mistakes. It's about making sure, you can learn from them before you have to make them yourself. I think that's quite an important message. So this channel is aimed at students. So whether you're a student trying to figure out your future, or if you're a teacher moving abroad, someone wants to maybe become a little bit better with their money, just someone who's trying to make better decisions in their life, I hope that somewhere in my experience you'll find something that helps you avoid making the same mistakes I did. Because if you can learn from the lesson from paying the price, I think that's quite a good deal. So a little bit about me. I'm Michael. I'm originally from Oban, which is a small town on the west coast of Scotland. It's one of those places that everyone seems to know everyone else. But growing up there taught me a lot about community, quite a lot about hard work, and about looking after people. And those values genuinely have actually stayed with me all my life. I've been teaching now for just over 10 years. I've worked in the UK, then in Qatar, and now Dubai, where I'm an assistant head teacher. And on paper, it sounds like things have gone to plan, but believe me, it really, really hasn't. Like everyone else, I made decisions that looked sensible at the time, but turned out to be very expensive lessons. So that's financially, professionally, personally. And these are the stories that I want to share with you, and I want to talk through them with you. It's not because I got all the answers, it's quite the opposite, but it's because I spent years wishing someone had shared them with me before I'd made these errors. When I was growing up, money wasn't something we really talked about. It's not because my family didn't really care. Far from it. I know that my parents did work incredibly hard. I know that my grandparents worked incredibly hard, but like so many families, they believed in earning an honest living and paying your bills and putting something aside if you could. But actually, in reality, in my life, like, even though my parents worked really hard, outside of work, my dad was very frivolous, and would often spend excessive amounts of money on alcohol and cigarettes, and the priority bills weren't as important to him at the time. Rent was always the number one thing he thought about, but if it was like school extras bill, they didn't get paid, or hotel bills were unpaid, suppliers were unpaid from his work, whereas my mum was completely the opposite and was really, really tight with her money. I actually sat with her the other day and she was telling me a story about how my dad had post-dated a cheque on a Saturday to go out drinking, and she had £10 for the week to feed a family of 5, and she was going around with a calculator, and she never said anything to anyone because, again, that pride came into it. So I think that being in that sort of mixed household was quite challenging as I got older, not really understanding the value of money as much as I did. But another thing that no one really did investing then. Investing was really looked at for rich people. No one's ever explained to me what inflation was. Nobody had explained how money grew, explained the difference between saving and building wealth. It's not people were financially responsible. My dad probably was, but I just hadn't had the education. And because I hadn't been taught, they couldn't teach me. Which is not a criticism, of course, it's just reality, and I think it's true for millions of families around the world. Like, most parents pass on what they know, and if nobody taught them, how could they actually teach their children that? I always remember like conversations about premium bonds, like that was the best place to do it. It was the most sensible thing to do. Money was always safe. You might win a prize. Everyone talked about like the £1 million prize if you came out the draw, and it felt responsible. And for many people, these absolutely have a place, but nobody explained like what inflation was doing in the background as well. Like, nobody explained that if prices rise faster than your money, you're actually becoming poorer in real terms, and it's not because of anything you've done wrong, but because the value of money isn't working hard enough. And that was a huge moment for me to learn as well. And it's not because premium bonds are good or bad, but because I realised that the entire world of personal finance that I'd never really been introduced to, didn't really learn anything about it in school. I knew how to analyse a poem. I didn't understand how to compound interest. I could explain scientific theories, but looking back, I didn't understand a mortgage. But again, I'm not blaming anyone for it. Like, schools have got enormous demands placed on them. Parents do the absolute best they can, but somewhere along the line there's a big gap, and that gap can become very, very expensive. And unfortunately, for me, I find out the hard way, like a lot of young adults. I got a credit card, or a number of credit cards, and to be honest, I genuinely didn't think much about it. I thought things would just go away. Everyone had one, it was normal. And it wasn't as if I was buying sports cars or luxury watches or going out shopping. It was ordinary things. I was going out, like meals out, a couple of bits and pieces online, going out, like, at university, going out during the week. And things like that didn't feel like a big deal individually. But when the statement arrived, it was quite clear that I couldn't clear that payment. So I just paid the minimum payment and told myself exactly, that's what most people tell themselves, I'll clear it next month. Then the next month became the next month after that, and then so on and so on. And before I knew it, I was in that cycle, and I was getting other credit cards to pay that credit card. And I believed I was making progress because every month I was paying something towards it. But what I didn't understand was how much of that payment was just covering the interest. The balance never moved. The bank was making the money, of course, and I was just standing still, getting deeper and deeper into debt. And nobody ever explained that to me, not properly. And then looking back now, it seems obvious. Like at the time, it wasn't, and that's exactly why I wanted to create this channel, because if one conversation can save somebody thousands of pounds over the course of their life, I think it's worth having. Now, I'm not going to tell these stories because I'm proud of making mistakes. I tell them because pretending you've always got it right doesn't help anyone. Like, the internet's full of people telling you how successful they are and how they make money or how everything is perfect, but like, it's not me. Like, I've not made a lot of money. I have made mistakes, and I'm more interested in talking about those mistakes because I guess they're the moments that change me. These are the moments that made me ask better questions, moments that made me realise experience is valuable, but only if you're willing to share it. And that's what this channel is about. It's not pretending to be perfect. It's not pretending to know everything. I'm learning as well, just sharing honest experiences in the hope that someone watching can make a better decision than what I did. And trust me, like, we're only just getting started, because one of the biggest decisions I've ever made was accepting a teaching job overseas. And at the time, again, I thought I understood what I was getting into, the reality. I'd been on holiday, but what it was very, very different. Accepting that first job overseas was something I've always wanted to do. It was one of the biggest decisions I've ever made. The excitement, had the interview, had the offer, looking at photographs online, looking at where I was going to be living, looking at the pool days, the sunshine, a new country, a chance to progress my career probably a little bit more quickly, a better salary than what I was on as a new teacher, an opportunity for something completely different. But like thousands of teachers every year, I convinced myself I'd done my research, and to be fair, I genuinely thought I had. I'd put like a lot of time and effort into it. I'd read loads of blogs. I'd been watching YouTube. I'd spoken to a few people who'd worked overseas or lived in that country. And I thought I knew exactly what I was walking into, but what I didn't realise, I guess, was that everyone tells you the exciting bits, but few people tell you the boring bits about it. So like all the paperwork, the unexpected costs, delays that might affect things, the little things that don't seem important until you're standing in another country, far from home with no real support. And again, it's one of those things that I wish someone had explained, because these are the things that create the stress. Because leaving home isn't easy. It's not just changing your job, it's changing a country, changing a culture, changing a support network, which is massive. Everything that had been familiar wasn't there anymore. And although that's an exciting thing and one of the reasons that I wanted to move, it is quite uncomfortable. People often say you're so lucky you live there, and they're not wrong. It's like there's beautiful places that I've lived in, and I've been fortunate enough to live in countries that I'm pleased and really proud to have called home. Met amazing people, worked with some brilliant colleagues, made some lifelong friends, experienced cultures that are completely changed the way I think about things. And I wouldn't change that for the world, I really wouldn't. But also I think I need to be honest and say that it's not a holiday. It's building a completely new life, and that really does take planning. One of the biggest mistakes that I made was assuming the contract told me everything that I needed to know. And that doesn't happen. A contract tells you what the employer is providing. It doesn't necessarily tell you what your life is going to cost, and those two things are very, very different. So, for example, people ask, does the school provide accommodation? Sometimes they do, but sometimes they provide an allowance instead. And that's on the contract, so it might be that you get an allowance. But that allowance sounds generous until you actually start looking into the rental market. you discovered the deposits, the agency fees, the utility connections. Most Middle East houses come unfurnished. The internet connection, what company you're going to go with, you need to have your ID to do things. So things you've not actually considered thinking about. But no one's trying to mislead you. It's just that you don't know what you don't know, and that's exactly why asking questions matters so much. Flights are another example for an international teacher. So you read annual flights are included, brilliant, but for who? Is it just you? Or if you've got a family, is your spouse covered, your children covered? Because flights are expensive, and as soon as you're over 2, you're paying full price for that. Is there a cash allowance? Does it actually cover the cost of the flights when the holidays and the prices are at their highest? And again, these are questions that I wish I'd asked, because assumptions have become very, very expensive. And then there's looking at the paperwork. Like, no one gets excited about paperwork, but trust me, like, I genuinely think you should. Things like police checks can take up to 3 to 4 weeks. Getting your qualifications attested, that's a massive thing, and it takes a lot of time to make sure you get it right. Getting your medical done when you arrive. If you have to do visa applications, every country has different requirements. Every employer has slightly different processes of how they go about things. And miss one document, and suddenly something that should have taken a week to get sorted can take up to a month, and you might not be able to work. It could even take longer. And again, nobody sat me down and said, here's the checklist, do it in this order because. So again, I've learned my own mistakes from that. And again, hopefully you won't have to. Primarily I can speak from first-hand experience about British qualifications and from what I've learned about other countries as well. But one of the things I've learned over the years is that the quality of your move often depends less on the country, but more about the support you receive. So a good HR team is worth their weight in gold. A great relocation coordinator can remove weeks and weeks of stress. Equally, poor communication can make an exciting move feel very overwhelming. And I have experienced both, and that's another reason why this is existing in this channel, not to criticise schools, but to help teachers know what questions to ask before they arrive. People will always focus more on their salary, like that's understandable, and we want to earn more, of course we do, but the salary on its own doesn't tell the whole story. What about your housing? What about your healthcare? What about your flights? Tax? Is there anything you have to know about that? The cost of living? How much is your first shop going to cost you? School places, if you have them, like how much is the uniform? Any professional development on the side? What about your end of service benefit? How does that get added up? You have to look at the whole package, I think, and because 2 jobs with exactly the same salary can leave you in completely different financial situations. And again, it's something that I wish I'd understood a lot sooner. But when I moved abroad, I also discovered that life runs differently depending on where you are. So simple things become learning experiences. So opening a bank account, getting a phone contract, registering for healthcare, finding somewhere to buy your groceries, working out how the public services operate. And back home, you don't often think about these things. Like, when you move house at home, you always think internet, get that sorted, and Sky, and then let's get up and running. But you spent years learning them without realizing, and then suddenly you're starting again. So it's not difficult forever, but it's difficult at first, and that's perfectly normal. There's nothing wrong with that. But one thing I've noticed throughout my career is that teachers are incredibly good at looking after everyone else. We're always planners or problem solvers, organisers, and we're used to helping students navigating like their own journey. But ironically, we're often terrible at asking for help ourselves, and we don't want to look inexperienced. We don't want to look like we need to be mollycoddled. We don't want to admit if we're unsure. I didn't want to admit I was unsure. I didn't want to admit I was getting things wrong or look needy. But if I'm honest, there was definitely moments when a 10-minute conversation with someone who'd done it would absolutely have helped me in so many days of frustration. And I hope that's what this channel can become. I hope it can be a conversation with you. It's the one I wish I'd had myself. But, as my career's developed and I've moved into leadership, I've genuinely had the privilege of working with outstanding teachers and students and dedicated school communities. And I've seen people flourish overseas and do amazing things in their life. But I've also seen brilliant teachers leave because the move wasn't what they expected. And not because the job was bad, but because the country was bad, but because their expectations didn't match the reality. And that's a very important distinction. The right move for one person isn't necessarily the right move for someone else. So success isn't about choosing the country with the biggest salary. It's about choosing the place that fits your priorities, your family, and your long-term goals. And I think that's really, really important. But looking back now, I don't regret moving abroad for a second. It's changed my life professionally, financially, personally. It's given me opportunities I've never imagined growing up in Oban, but I also know that I'd have enjoyed those first few months a lot more if someone had handed me a guide saying, here's everything that no one tells you. And that's what I really want to build here for teachers and for students moving to the UK for university. But because experience only has valuable when you pass it on, and one experience in particular sums that up exactly why this channel exists. And it's started with something as simple as my mobile phone in Dubai, so something I'd not even considered going to be a problem. And yet, several days it caused complete chaos. So I'll tell you like what happened. When you arrive in Dubai, you will get given a SIM card, and it's a tourist SIM because you don't have your Emirates ID yet. So when you get this SIM, you have it for 2 weeks, and you get a small amount of data, which gets used very quickly. So you will probably use that in the taxi to your accommodation, and then you have to top it up. And then that's your phone number, and you can use that in the time that you're there. Now, at no point did anyone tell me that you only have a certain amount of time to use that SIM card for. Now, bearing in mind that I've got a wife, and I've got at the time a 1.5-year-old boy, and I was registering all the services on this phone number. So when it came to converting the number to a permanent phone contract, I went to Do, which is the provider, and I was there. I said, I want to convert this number. It's not showing that I've got 5G for some reason. I don't know why. I said, oh, it's because you have taken too long to register your Emirates ID, so we've deleted that number. Now, that sounds like, oh, well, we could maybe fix that, but actually they delete the number. It had already gone to someone else, which was just maddening because all my services, all my nursery emergency contacts were on there, and I just felt like I was like completely exposed in that situation because I'd given out this number, and all my new work colleagues had it, and I now didn't have that phone number to use. So changing everything took so much time, and it was little things like gas is like the thing that you have in most of accommodation blocks in Dubai, and it's a separate bill when you arrive. So the gas man would be trying to ring me to service the gas canister, but he couldn't get through. And then, you know, other things like the nursery would be saying, oh, your son might need picked up because he's not well, but they couldn't get through to my phone number. So it took a good week or so to get everyone back onto a new number that I had. But it's just one of these little things that no one knows about. It's an infuriating, and it probably is a mistake on my part. Yeah, I should have looked it up more. But again, I hope this experience can help someone else, and it can hopefully it'll help you like see what's happening and how you get through these things. I guess the message is that the admin is something that you just need to be so aware of and so on top of it, because whilst all these little jobs take maybe 10 minutes to register for, it suddenly becomes a week at the end of the day because you're trying to get all these things set up. But one of the things that I also realised about moving abroad was that it isn't just a financial adjustment as much as it is an emotional one. When I moved, you know, we missed a couple of birthdays. My brother's birthday, his fiance at the time's birthday, friends getting married, friends having babies, especially through COVID when you couldn't fly, your parents getting older as well. Like, these sacrifices don't usually get like the Instagram pictures. Like, you'll obviously see your beaches and your skylines and your brunches and all these other things, but actually you don't see the evenings where you're maybe sitting on your own in your new apartment wondering if you made the right decision, or you're feeling quite lonely. I think it's important to say that, because if you ever feel like that, you're not the only one. And so many people go through that, and making the most of the community is something, especially as a teacher, trying to get in within a community in schools is incredibly important. And almost everyone I know who's moved internationally has questioned themselves at some point whether it's right or not. But the difference is most people, again, don't talk about that. But thankfully, you know, as time's gone on, things have really settled. Like, work becomes familiar, and something that, you know, you will probably hear online is that your community becomes like your family. Everyone looks after each other. That, you know, routines get developed quite quickly, And then Dubai has become our home over the last year, just as Qatar has before that for 6 years. But these countries like have taught me a lot of different things, and every role has changed the way that I think. Every mistake has made me ask better questions. So as a teacher, and as a now I guess a school leader, and for my family as well, I think that one of the most crucial messages is that it isn't really about avoiding mistakes at all. It's because that's impossible. It's far more about learning quickly from the unavoidable ones, and I think that, you know, looking at these unavoidable mistakes is something that, you know, we should always consider. And I think if we can do that, then we're onto a winner there, I think, in my opinion. Like, I'm not pretending, you know, in any way that I've mastered life. I definitely haven't. I still get things badly wrong. There's still decisions that I look back on and cringe, and, you know, I wish I'd handled them differently. But those experiences can save someone else time and money and stress. But hopefully it can give them confidence to make a decision that they've maybe been putting off. And that's why I think sharing them is so worthwhile. Over the coming months, that's exactly what you can expect from this channel. Like on Mike's School of Mistakes, that we'll talk about money, we'll talk about making mistakes, not from the perspective of someone pretending to be a financial guru or advisor, because I'm definitely not, but from someone who's made enough mistakes to know what I'd do differently. I'd love to talk about investing. I'd love to talk about why I wish I'd understood that earlier, how I think about long-term financial planning now. We'll talk about international teaching, countries, packages. For students, it's all about looking at what's your next decision after finishing school? What are you moving to? Are you happy with the glossy brochures? Do you know what course you're going to be doing? Do you know the content of that? Do you know what it's going to be like at Freshers' Fair? Like setting up your bank accounts, making sure that you're not being sold into an overdraft or a credit card, and looking at all these different things financially, and, you know, making big mistakes and putting yourself in a debt that you cannot control and you cannot get out of until you leave university, and how that has an impact on your credit file, because in the UK that's a far bigger issue than the Middle East, let's say. But also compare different education systems, different school packages, different cost of living. And if you're thinking about moving overseas, I want you to have the information that I never had. I think we'll talk about, you know, school leadership as well in education, and what, you know, where I think it's going, and what some teachers don't see, and why leaders make those decisions. I think conversations I've had with students over the years is also something worth exploring. The lessons that, you know, they've taught me, but believe it or not, some of the biggest lessons haven't come from any courses. They've come from teenagers asking really honest questions. So if you've watched this that far, thank you very much for watching. I genuinely appreciate your time, because it's the one thing that no one gets back. If anything I've spoken about you today has resonated with you, I'd love to hear about it. Drop me a message. Maybe you've made financial mistakes that change the way you think about things. Maybe you've moved abroad and discovered that something that nobody warned you about. Maybe you're a student trying to work out what comes next after school, or maybe you're simply trying to make better decisions than you made yesterday. But whatever brought you here, thank you very much. It's not a channel where I'll pretend to know everything or have all the answers. It's definitely a place where hopefully we can ask better questions, hopefully we'll be able to learn together, and hopefully we'll make fewer mistakes along the way. So if that sounds like something you'd like to be part of, I'd really appreciate you subscribing, not because I want that number on the screen, but because I genuinely believe the next conversation might be the one that saves someone from making a huge mistake that could have been avoided. So thank you for watching, and I guess I'll not call it episodes, I'll call it lessons. So thank you very much. Take care.